Yo, what's up? This is Jay Dennis, and we're back with another Ranked and Reviewed. This time we're talking about one of my favorites. Get away from that cactus, please. Get away from that cactus, please. You need to move away. Okay. That will not be edited out. We are back with another one of my favorite metal bands of all time, Camira. Very underrated band. They were part of the golden age of metalcore of the 2000s. They definitely should have been bigger, but they did have quite a bit of fame, and they played a lot of big shows, and I saw them play live a few times in high school, and shit, I got a lot of great memories of Camira. And I'm excited that for the past year, Rob Arnold has been putting out content, maybe longer than a year, but at least since I've been watching him. Rob Arnold, the guitar player and one of the masterminds of the band, has been putting out content on YouTube. A great video podcast, bunch of other videos, playthroughs, answering questions. Very cool, down-to-earth guy. Fucking riff machine, beautiful guitar tone. And much like Dan Donegan, what I really like about him and his guitar playing is he probably puts a slight cap. Like, he's not super flashy or anything. He kind of injects like a little bit of showing off here and there where it matters. So that makes his, if you want to cover Camira's music, it makes it more accessible. The guitar solos, while challenging at times, aren't impossible to play unless, compared to like maybe playing like Children of Bodom or Dream Theater or something. But Rob Arnold is one of my favorite guitar players. If I were to make a super group, I would probably, if that super group had two guitarists, he very well could be, well, actually, Anders Herrick would be the drummer of the super group. So I don't know if having two members of the same band in the same super group would work. At the very least, it would be either Anders on drums or Rob Arnold on guitar. The other guitarist would be Wes Borland from Limp Bizkit. Anyway, I've been listening to Camira since my sophomore year. I saw them tour the Resurrection album, and I saw them tour the Infection album, and I've been listening to them ever since, but they haven't put out music since 2013, but the fact that Rob Arnold is still active is pretty awesome. So I'm reviewing their 7 studio albums, and of course I'm adding Crown of Phantoms because that's technically a Camira album, even though it's got only Mark Hunter as the original member. Camira is very much his baby, and I think he came up with the name. And that album sounds very much like a Camira album, just with some nuance. So that's why I'm counting that one. So without further ado, we're going to go through all the albums, rank them one by one. I'm going to review them, share some stories, and like a few other videos I've done, there's a couple of ties between a few rankings, but the tiebreaker is usually which album has the better favorite songs, in my opinion, or the X factor generally being nostalgia, or just something that you can't quite put your finger on that makes something magical. I didn't know that I was going to be able to actually rank these because Camira, they've had a very consistent sound from Pass Out of Existence all the way up to Crown of Phantoms. Yeah, there's been some different stylistic changes. Every album kind of has its own identity, but they've kind of had a very similar style throughout. So I just went through and scored every song and then weighed it and scored every album, and I was actually able to come up with the ranking. So without further ado, 4 minutes in, let's go ahead and get started. 7 albums dating from 2001 all the way up to 2013. Hopefully they can put out something again soon because they are sorely missed. All right, number 7, we have The Year of the Year of the Snake from 2011. I actually did listen to this album when it came out. I didn't buy it, but I was listening to it. This album got a 7.92 out of 10. So the worst album got a 7.92 and the best album got a 8.56, just to kind of give you that spread. Age of Hell, not Year of the Snake. Age of Hell is but the Year of the Snake, I was quoting that. Age of Hell is a pretty flat album and has a couple of redeeming qualities. A couple of the tracks are great, like Clockwork. Of course, the best track on the album is Year of the Snake, especially that Year of the Snake that leads to the breakdown. It's like the heaviest vocal line I've ever heard out of Mark Hunter. Born in Blood, I think. I shorthanded the song titles again. And then Trigger Finger is a great song too. But it's just, you can tell, and there was a bit of a lineup change. Not as extreme as Crown of Phantoms, but a big enough lineup change where you can kind of tell the band's hurting here. The only way this album was kind of like a parallel to my life was 2011 was not a particularly consistently good year for me. It had some high moments, but there was a lot of drama going on in my life and with my band. So I kind of feel like I could relate to what Camira was going through. And when the band's lacking chemistry and you're kind of like on your last legs or whatever, the music might suffer. So yeah, the hooks, the ferocity, it just kind of fell more flat with this album. That's why I ranked this one at the bottom. Age of Hell, their worst album. Doesn't mean that there's not some good tracks on there, though. Again, a 7.92 out of 10 still means that it's almost a great album. It's just a pretty good album. Next up at the number 6 spot, we have the 2013 release and their last release, Crown of Phantoms. I was pleasantly surprised by how solid this album was. I gave it an 8.12 out of 10. So it got 0.2 higher than Age of Hell. It opens on a strong note with The Machine. The Transmigration is the absolute best instrumental they've ever done. And I'm not talking about their long 13-minute instrumentals. I'm just talking about like tracks like ABO or Stoma. Those are like transition tracks. They're like a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes. The Great Transmigration, whatever it's called, is one of the best instrumentals I've ever heard. Leading up to the other best track on the song, the title track, Crown of Phantoms, easily the best track on the album. King of the Shadow World's a pretty solid track too, and so is Love So Violence. So what I really like about Crown of Phantoms is it does have the Camira identity, because Mark Hunter is at the forefront of it. I think the other members of the band, like the guitarist, they were from like Doth or something. I might be wrong, but that's what I remember reading. The guitar work on this album is solid. The guitar solos are a little bit more technical than what Rob Arnold did, but they are fluid. They sound pleasing to the ear, and the rhythm section behind the solos are as pounding as like anything that Rob Arnold and Matt DeVries did. So Crown of Phantoms really does check off a lot of the boxes. It's just slightly nuanced sound because it's different musicians. But if Mark Hunter had a hand in writing any of the guitar parts, which I'm going to guess he did, or he had any hand in what direction he wanted this to sound like, it came out sounding like a lot like a Camira album. So you can tell that it's not Rob Arnold playing guitar, and you can tell that it's a different, other instrumentalists. And that's kind of why this album's towards the bottom, because Camira is ultimately that original lineup with Andals, Rob Arnold, Matt DeVries. I think the bass player's name is Jim. And of course, Mark. So Crown of Phantoms is a great album, but obviously it's not their top work. So let's go to the next one, which I was hoping this one would rank a little bit higher because of my preference, but some bands do certain sounds better than others. At the 5 spot, we have their debut album, 2001's Pass Out of Existence, which came out during the turn of the century, during the nu metal boom, revolution. I was hoping this album would place higher, because I'm obviously a huge fan of nu metal, but frankly, Camira does the metalcore sound better. Pass Out of Existence, though, getting an 8.16 out of 10. I don't know if you guys can hear my French bulldog breathing in the background, scratching his neck. What's fun about this album is the entire album really is like in drop A and probably a song or two like Rizzo in drop G. So this is like their heaviest album in terms of like the sonicality of the guitars, the low end, all that stuff. This album just kind of suffered though, because aside from Options, just the last 4 tracks, aside from Options, which is one of the best songs on the album, just kind of dragged the score down a little bit. But tracks Dead Inside up through Rizzo, every track is great. They really, even though the guitar works a little bit simpler, it's executed well. Rob Arnold said on his latest Everything You Love video podcast, which is what got me back into them, that it doesn't matter the mixing or anything. It's just how the riff is played in the guitar player himself. You could give the best guitar player in the world a riff machine, a shitty Hello Kitty guitar, and they will play it, make it sound better than some intermediate player on like the nicest guitar, nicest amp in the world. So simplicity shines really well on this album, but it doesn't mean that it's not without its great lead work. Songs like I think Lumps has like some solid lead work in it. Severed is a great single. So is, of course, Split, the fucking music video for Split, where they all jump at the beginning. I fucking love that shit. That's nu metal at its core right there. I don't know if they identified as a nu metal band at the time, but they were doing, I guess, whatever needed to get signed, and maybe that's what felt natural to them, but then eventually they evolved into a sound that was more fitting for them. Lumps, Taste My, and Options are the top tracks for me. Pass Out of Existence aged very well, and Mark Hunter's voice sounds especially good on here, especially when he does a lot more of like the talking, not rapping, but just like the more talking, spoken word kind of singing stuff. Like I like that his vocals are a little bit more diverse in this album. So the number 5 spot goes to Pass Out of Existence. All right, at the number 4 spot, we have another album that I'm surprised scored here, but I can explain. Their 2005 release, self-titled, Camira. This is a very well-written album. It's extremely solid. There's no weak tracks on there, but there's no song except for Comatose that scored higher than an 8.6. So, again, no weak tracks. It's just a very solid album. If you like Camira's more albums like Crown of Phantoms or Impossibility of Reason, where there's more short tracks that you can just jam to real quick, then great. But if you're one of those metalheads that's like likes Metallica, or you like other bands that write generally long songs, then the self-titled album is the one for you. This one has their longest tracks. I don't think there's any tracks shorter than fucking 5 minutes. My favorite tracks are Save Ourselves, Comatose, and Everything You Love. And then, of course, Nothing Remains is a great single that aged really well. Rob Arnold is a GD riff machine on this album, and it all sounds really good. I know that the circumstances around this album weren't great. Like, I guess they weren't getting great label attention, but fortunately, this album is generally seen as one of their best, and it's a great part of their legacy. The music writing is phenomenal. The arrangements are fantastic. Mark Hunter sounds awesome. And even though that Anders Herrick isn't in here, the drumming's not shabby at all by any means. So this is definitely a great album. And again, it's solid from front to back. It's just, even though there's no weak tracks, there's no standout tracks that I can just listen to real quick and get amped up. Like, they're all long storytelling songs. So you have to kind of be in a certain mood to listen to this album if you're me. If I needed a quick jolt, though, I guess maybe Comatose. Even if that song is long, it goes by pretty quick. So yeah, that one got an 8.29 out of 10. Number 3 spot. Once again, I thought this one would rank lower, but this one has the most nostalgic value for me. The Infection from 2009, an album that came out as I was graduating high school, going into that summer, going into college. This was a huge soundtrack to that summer of 2009. So The Infection definitely has a lot of nostalgic value for me. What surprised me the most about this one being at the top was I did not like the way Mark Hunter's vocals were mixed in this one. I think in a lot of tracks he sounded particularly weak, and perhaps the gain was too high on it. Like, there wasn't a lot of depth to his voice. I don't know if it was the performance or if it was just a mixing issue. But what really helped this album get elevated is it has 2 of my all-time favorite Camira tracks. Destroy and Dominate, which is probably my favorite song from them. And then Try to Survive. 2 back-to-back tracks, which are just absolute bangers to this day. Still easily the best tracks on the album. Impending Doom aged really well. So there's a couple tracks on here that are definitely longer, but it kind of pleases both the storytelling element of their longer tracks, like Impending Doom, which aged really well, especially that middle like just the instrumentation on this album is fantastic. It's just some of the songs, like the opening 2 tracks. To me, this album, upon years later, it doesn't open on the strongest note compared to their other albums, but the rest of the album does quite well. Coming Alive is where the album actually comes alive. Secrets of the Dead is awesome. The fact that they gave I forgot his name. He does the synth, and his name's Justin or something. The fact that they gave him a much larger role in this album is what really helped give this album its own identity. Weakest track was On Broken Glass. Great intro riff, but the vocal performance isn't my favorite. And the heart of it all is an excellent closing track in terms of like their long ass instrumentals. So yeah, it's the X factor of nostalgia value, and of course having the track Destroy and Dominate and Survive, Try to Survive doesn't hurt. So it puts The Infection at the number 3 spot at an 8.36. Number 2, which also got an 8.36, but I'm going to give the edge to this one because The Impossibility of Reason, their sophomore album. What's the opposite of a sophomore slump? Sophomore success? This one just had more going for it. Had less weak tracks. It had, even though it didn't have any songs that got above a 9, the way Destroy and Dominate did, the fact that this album is just chock full of memorable, powerful legacy songs from Camira. Some of the most popular, notoriously good songs are on this album. You have fucking Power Trip. You have Pure Hatred, which are just Camira staples. Power Trip is that perfect, short Camira jolt that you need. Like, if you only have a few minutes for whatever reason to like just kind of like get an adrenaline rush, Power Trip is a perfect track for that. I used to listen to Power Trip, a lot of Impossibility of Reason back in like my sophomore year of high school when I was at the gym. This is such a fucking great album. So of course there's sentimental value here. Cleansation is easily one of their best opening tracks. The fucking guitar solo with the harmonic effect and like the Egyptian sound, it's fucking iconic. Like, Rob Arnold's guitar work is incredible on this song, and it just makes me want to just pick it up and learn the solos and everything. My favorite track on the album is Down Again, which is kind of like a heavy ballad. It's definitely heavy, but like it's got like clean vocals in it. It's got like, what is that, piano or just really good clean guitar at the beginning. It's just like a really heavy metalcore alternative track, and I love it. It aged really well. My other favorite track is Stig Murder. That fucking breakdown in the middle of it. Like, I came up in high school during the age of like breakdowns becoming like saturated in the metal community, and everybody's like, oh yeah, I like the dun 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 with like the halftime drums going on in the background. But me, fuck that. I wanted like those fast breakdowns that you could do, like where the cymbals were fast and like the bass drums were still following the low end. Like, if you need a fucking adrenaline shot, listen to Stig Murder. And the riffage is phenomenal in that one too. So Impossibility of Reason, just like The Infection, does have quite a bit of nostalgia value for me. And it's just a massive Camira staple. And again, it got the same score as The Infection, but I'm going to give the edge to Impossibility just because it's such a phenomenal album. It's got more good songs on it. It has less weak tracks. The only song that I deemed weak was the song Crawl. If anything, that's probably the lowest ranked Chimaira song out of their entire catalog. That one got a 7.4. Usually my favorite bands don't have songs below a 7. Just like with the In Flames discography. Make sure you go check that one out too. I did it In Flames. All right. Number 1 spot. And at this point you probably shouldn't be surprised. One of my all-time favorite metal albums, Resurrection. This was iconic in so many ways. 2007, dude, that fucking year, like, again, golden age of metalcore, man. I'm not trying to lump Camira into a particular genre or anything, but like they were part of that, playing with bands like Killswitch, Shadows Fall, As I Lay Dying, and Flames. Like all these bands out there just fucking crushing it, putting out super heavy and catchy music. I saw them, and like I said, I did see Camira when they were touring The Infection. That was a great show. They played with like Disturbed and fucking Killswitch and Lacuna Coil, Bury or Dead, Suicide Silence. Oh, that was when I got to see Mitch Lucker. Resurrection, though, that was one of the absolute most life-changing concerts I ever went to. At that time, and still to this day, I haven't gone to many concerts ever since. I saw Camira open up for Killswitch Engage when Killswitch was touring as Daylight Dies. So again, huge era. I was super happy to be a part of it. Seeing Camira come out and just fucking destroy the place, I was scared. I was literally scared to go into the mosh pit. That was absolutely the most terrifying floor I had ever been on. It was like the House of Blues in Orlando. That was the absolute most devastating live experience I've ever seen. And like the crowd was going crazy. I had to like just step back and just stare in pure awe of their performance. Resurrection, again, just powerful shit from start to finish. It opens up with the absolute best opening track, the title track, Resurrection. The guitar solo with the tapping, every single fucking riff, the chorus, as simple as it is, determination, perseverance, resolution, and then the fucking resurrection. It's just, God, it always gets me amped. It's such a fucking anthem. It is, anytime I need to be resurrected from a shitty mood, this song does it. But then it just carries into another great track, Pleasure and Pain. More excellent guitar work, the way that the lead guitars are just layered on just top of blistering drums and just blistering guitar riffs. Like, the songwriting on this album is just fantastic. And 6 itself is just a masterpiece. It's a long-ass song, but it flows. It's a masterpiece. Killing the Beast is still my least favorite track on the album, but over time it did grow on me, so I actually think it's still like an 8 out of 10. How can we not talk about The Flame, best track on the album? I remember I learned the guitar solo, and I played it for my friend. He's like, "You can't play that," and then I played it, and he's like, "Whoa, you can play it!" The Flame has got a lot of sentimental value. I mean, obviously Resurrection itself still has a lot of sentimental value, but it's definitely the album out of all of these that where today, years later, I can still play it front to back, and it doesn't slow down at all. Just like with In Flames' Come Clarity album, from start to finish, it never slows down, and that's like the mark of, to me, the best album. Heavier tracks like Worthless, Needle, just gut-wrenching guitar riffs, a lot of triplets, a lot of chugging. Like, this was Camira in their prime. Andals had just come back in the band. The band chemistry was fantastic. They got on a new label. And this is just a perfect example of what a happy band sounds like in their prime, making the best possible music. And I've watched a few documentaries. They were very nitpicky about getting this thing as perfect as possible. And because of that, it's going to have an everlasting legacy in the metal community. If Camira never put out another album again, which I hope they do, but if they never did again, just the sheer fact that they have Resurrection behind them, and of course Impossibility of Reason, and self-titled, is what's really going to carry them forward and keep them ingrained in the history books of metal. So that's my ranking. Again, from worst to best, Age of Hell, Crown of Phantoms, Pass Out of Existence, self-titled, The Infection, Possibility of Reason, Resurrection. So thank you guys for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'm running out of time here, so I'm talking a little fast. Go to the Ranked and Reviewed playlist to see the other videos I recently done in Flames, and I've also recently done Taylor Swift. Fuck yeah.